Welcome back, Ultima Weapons. It's the Night Sky Prince again. When you think of the word anniversary, you usually think of something happy, a celebration, excitement for things to come. And that's the exact opposite of what's happening with the Final Fantasy community right now. Square Enix just ran one of the most unexpected live streams ever. Said to be a second anniversary stream that would detail the latest developments for the game, and it ended up being one of the most incredibly awkward streams that I've ever tuned into. And it left most fans pretty heartbroken. First and foremost, we have to start with the fact that Square Enix has cancelled Final Fantasy 15 Dawn of the Future. That's right, all of the DLC that was supposed to come out in the year 2019 is cancelled, with the exception of episode Arden, as it was too late in development for it to make sense to cancel. So it's set for the release of March 2019. And as shocking as that isn't even the real surprise here. The real surprise is that Final Fantasy 15 director Hajime Tabata has shockingly resigned from Square Enix, as well as his newly formed subsidiary company Luminous Productions altogether. All of this news is completely and utterly strange. It's very much out of left field. Tabata was literally just talking about Season 2 at the end of September. He was just talking about his plans for the new IP and all these other things, and now he's suddenly leaving without a good excuse as to why. So it really begs the question, why did Hajime Tabata really leave Square Enix? In Hajime Tabata's letter of resignation, he states, quote, "In regards to my next endeavors and near future, I have a project that I truly wish to solidify as my next challenge after Final Fantasy 15. For that reason, I have decided to leave my current position and start my own business in order to achieve my goal." Nearly all of Hajime Tabata's projects have faced cancellation at some point or another. Final Fantasy Type 0 was almost cancelled when the company was facing extreme financial struggles. Tabata was working on a new IP after finishing Type 0, which ended up being cancelled as he was taking off the project to work on Final Fantasy 15. Of course, because the company viewed it as a bigger priority. Type Next was a game that Tabata wanted to begin on after development of Final Fantasy 15 came to a close, but it wasn't something that Square Enix was willing to greenlight as they expected poor sales. And now Tabata wanted to do one last effort to satisfy his fans with Final Fantasy 15 Dawn of the Future, and Square went in and cancelled that as well. But Square Enix has literally given him a subsidiary company that he can pretty much create whatever he wants with. In fact, when he left, he was working on a new IP, which, by the way, is still in development but doesn't have an announced director. Is it possible that when Square Enix decided to cancel Dawn of the Future, that it was a breaking point for Tabata? Or is it something else? In the same week that Tabata left Square Enix, the company lost $33 million, citing Luminous Productions' initial investment as the reason for it. Because of that, Square Enix had to cancel all projects that Luminous Production was working on, aside from their new IP, of course. The amount of money being lost was even more than Square Enix had initially planned for. They cited the cause for these losses being other entertainment content. That is, things that the studio was working on which would translate into non-game projects. In fact, during the stream, they announced that an anime short about Arden would release prior to his episode. So it seems they may have had other Final Fantasy 15 anime or movie content that was in the works but didn't end up seeing the light of day. All of this content was costly and just didn't yield as much profit for the company. The numbers aren't entirely clear, but looking into it, it would seem that Kingsglaive made a much smaller fraction than something like Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Of course, Advent Children was based on a successful released game, and Final Fantasy 15 tried to come out of the gate with expanded media content. For those of you who've been following me on this channel for a long time, you know that I'm not anti-DLC, but I am quite firmly against multimedia projects, especially when they contain vital narrative that isn't in the main game. It's actually pretty funny to think that those projects that were perceived as milking Final Fantasy 15 ended up hurting it from a critical perspective and is now starting to do damage to its overall success. The game sold 8.1 million units and made Square Enix a lot of money, but now with losses like these, it's sort of going against that success. Look, I'm going to be honest here, this makes Square Enix look absolutely bad right now. Since the era of Final Fantasy 13, Square Enix has solely been earning this reputation of being a company that's a completely incompetent developer, and this only further highlights that. Of course, Season 2 shouldn't have ever even needed to exist. The game should have told a comprehensive story from the beginning till the end, without the need for inserts. But you know what? In spite of all that, I was completely open to the idea of Dawn of the Future making changes and giving us the Final Fantasy 15 that we wanted, or at least allowing us to have our questions answered. And now so many of them will never be answered. We will never get to see more of Lunafreya or Aranea or any of those characters. My channel name is the Night Sky Prince. I've cosplayed Noctis, I was watching E3 when Final Fantasy Versus 13 was announced, I bought the Ultimate Collector's Edition of the game because I was one of the people fortunate enough to be home when the Uncovered event was happening and pre-ordered at the exact second that pre-orders were open. I actually really liked Pocket Edition and I thought that was a great way to expand the game to a casual audience. Overall, I loved Final Fantasy 15, but I have to be completely honest with you guys. This is really inexcusable. Everything from the state in which the game was released in, to how it was handled going forward, to the focus on collaborations like Assassin's Creed, or let's be honest, even stuff that many of us liked like the Terror Wars event, which by the way I personally loved the Terror Wars event. The team could have easily spent that time adding more meaningful content to the game, and instead they decided to chase golden goose eggs. And I'm not against collaborations whatsoever. In fact, I think how they handled Cup Noodle was downright hilarious, and it overall was still an enjoyable way to do product placement. But instead of looking at how bad fans wanted to see more of these characters, more of this world, they should have placed these things on hold. Or better yet, cancel the things that aren't necessities. We have to be honest with ourselves at this point. Hajime Tabata and Square Enix have mishandled Final Fantasy 15. It makes me sad down to my core that these episodes will never see the light of day. All of this news left Final Fantasy as a brand in a bad state at the moment, and it does not look good. Square Enix's PR team is going to have to do really well in order to save their butts. But in the end, there's only one thing that can save this series from its current path. Yet again, the fate of everything rests on the shoulders of Cloud Strife. So Ultima Weapons, are you sad that Hajime Tabata is no longer working at Square Enix? Or are you just disappointed that Dawn of the Future is no longer coming? Subscribe, click the bell icon, and let me know in the comments below. And if you really love Final Fantasy 15, I mean really love Final Fantasy 15, be sure to head on over to our Facebook group, Ultima, Square Enix plus JRPGs, the only place where we'll never cancel on you after we've already gotten you excited. Link in the description below.